Hey guys, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes. Hey everybody, hey, I'm live. Yeah, sorry, I'm a little bit late. Yes, hi, Anav, Danny, Josh. Super excited for this new live on Ethereum and DeFi news. There was a lot of news in DeFi and blockchain as usual. And first, I would like to have a look at DeFi Pulse, where you can see the total market cap of DeFi. So as you can see, this week we crossed the we already went above the 2 billion mark. Well, that was actually 1 week ago. So that's pretty impressive because it really took a while to go from 0 to 1, but to go from 1 to 2 billion, that was really fast. Hey, Josh asked a question here. Any chance I can get position doing Solidity? Oh, you know what? Actually, I'll answer the questions at the end. I'll just go through the news first. We reached the 2 billion mark. And if we look at the main project, so Compound is still at the first place, but Maker is coming as a close second. Synthetics, Avins, the DApp, so this hasn't changed much. Balancer is still continuing his ascension. So on Compound, of course, recently there was all this crazy yield farming, but since they changed the rule, that was about a week ago, the yield farming on Compound started to slow down a little bit, but still, it still remained its first place, and DeFi in general is growing like crazy. There was another chart that I saw this week. It was about the prices of DeFi tokens, and it showed you how the DeFi token outperforms most other crypto asset. That was really insane. I know the Aave token was like plus 800%, and you had other token like SNX for synthetics. You also had the token of Kyber like plus a few 100% over the past few months. So yeah, that was really insane. So another thing I like to check when I check the news of Ethereum and DeFi is the rates. So I go for that. I go to DeFi rate, and you can check the earning and the lending rate for different assets and different protocols. So when you analyze the rate, you have these two dimensions. You have the assets and also the different protocols. And so what is interesting is to see, so here you can choose if you want to lend or borrow. So probably that you want to lend. And here in the green box, you can see the protocol that pay the most. So for example, for DAI, you can see on Aave it's almost 7%. That is really high. That's really nice. If you have some DAI, which is a non-risky asset, you can make 7% on Aave. So instead of just keeping your DAI just sleeping, you should put them somewhere. Then USDC is not bad either, and I think the reason why it's lower than DAI is because DAI is still more demanded in DeFi, because DAI is more decentralized, and because as we will see later in this video, something happened on USDC recently, and the rate for Ethereum aren't too good. Wrap Bitcoin also not great. Tether, it's slightly better, but still worse than USDC and DAI. And as for so BAT token, so the rate for lending BAT were really crazy a couple of weeks ago when everybody was doing yield farming on Compound, but it has changed, and now we're back at very low level. So yeah, the big news is that we have a very healthy rate for DAI. So that's something really interesting. Next for DeFi news, so Binance is going to list Synthetic, the token of the Synthetic protocol. So that's super bullish for DeFi, because when you have a centralized exchange that lists a DeFi token, that means that you're gonna have a lot of liquidity, and in general, that's really bullish for the token. So that could be an interesting signal for buying SNX and then using it for doing some yield farming. Then another big news was the release of a new version of Kyber. So Kyber is one of the leading decentralized exchanges in DeFi, and so they released a new version of the protocol as well as the DAO. So the DAO is for governance, and basically what happened is that, let me show you, they have a chart somewhere, yeah, here. So you buy some KNC token, you stake it inside a DAO, and you're gonna receive some reward paid in Ether, I believe, every time you make a vote for the protocol. So that's a nice way to leverage your holding of KNC. So if you're interested in the protocol, that's one additional reason to get involved. And then we're gonna scroll down to when they're going to talk about the Catalyst protocol upgrade. So this upgrade comes with something very important. So now you can set your custom spread for each trade. So who cares about this? So if you want to build your exchange on top of Kyber, that's because anybody can build what they call a reserve. And now you can set your own custom spread. So that's better if you want to build something on top of Kyber. And that also reduced the network fee. So before, for each trade you have to pay them 0.25%. Now it's 0.20%. So that means that they're going to be more liquidity on Kyber. And finally, reserve routing for better rates. So this means that when you have a trade on Kyber, you can split it across different reserves. And so by doing this, you will reduce the overall slippage of your order. And so that will make the exchange, make the trade have a better price. So I believe that one of the reasons why they're doing all this update is because it's getting more competitive on the DEX market. And actually, the trading on Kyber decreased the past few months. So probably they started to feel the pressure coming from competitors. So they really had to do something to make the exchange more sexy to trader. Have you guys used Kyber before? What do you think about Kyber? Then another important news is Circle. So that's the company, or one of the company that run USDC, which is a centralized stable coin. So they froze $100,000 worth of USDC after a request from the government. So that's very important because you have all these different stablecoin, USDC, Tether, DAI. Some are decentralized like DAI, some are not, and some people don't really care. But you see, in example like this, that it actually care. So of course, we always imagine that nobody's going to freeze our coin because we are law-abiding citizen, and everything will be fine. But it's we can never be sure 100%. So if that's something that really matters to you, then that would be a good reason to use DAI instead of USDC. Then on the yield farming front, we have some news. So MStable, that's an up and coming DeFi protocol. It's going to launch a new governance token called MTA. So he just announced this on Twitter. And so let me see, they explain somewhere how it's going to show. I thought there was a chart. But basically, I think the distribution mechanism is quite simple. Is you basically participate in one of their pool, and you are rewarded with governance token. So that's one more option for yield farming. Then still on the yield farming front, so BZX, which is a protocol that unfamously got hacked at the beginning of this year. That was the biggest flash loan attack. So they are coming back and they're releasing a governance token to reward participants of the protocol. However, the way they're going to distribute the token are a little bit more complex. So they have a schema here. So I didn't have the time to go through it, but basically it's a little bit complicated than just you participate and you get some governance token. I think when you get the governance token, it gives you the right to get some trading fee. So probably need to study a bit more before participating to this yield farming. But that's cool that we see a lot of DeFi protocols starting to do their own yield farming incentive. So that really gives a lot of choice to a DeFi trader. And there was something else that I find that was pretty cool. So it is this is this website, the Yield Farmer tier list. So this is basically a page that compares the different yield farming opportunity. So if you are hesitating, you know which yield farming strategy you want to do, that's interesting. So here we have DeFi yield farming trifecta. So this one is actually quite complex. They have others, 90-10 balancer pool. So on the balancer protocol, yeah. So actually, this is a lot of yield farming strategy I never saw before. Yeah. Then something else that I find interesting is a report by Dab Radar about the decentralized exchanges. So if you want to have an overall vision of what's happening on the market, that's very interesting. Then they have some nice graph. Let me scroll down. So here we can see the top 8 DEX between 2019 and 2020. So we can see interesting figure here, the market share. So we can see that Uniswap V2 went from 16% to 30% in 2020. So you can see really that Uniswap is on the way up. They're also the exchange with the most pair available. And then we have Kyber, which lost a bit of market share, not too much, but a little bit. DYDX, which appeared very recently, so they're up and coming. And of course, Curve, that appeared very recently. So with Curve, you can trade pair of Stablecoin, and they started trading a couple of months ago and instantly became really popular. And now you can see that they have 12% of the market. 0x, which is another protocol for trading tokens. We don't talk a lot of 0x, but they are quietly progressing in the DeFi space. IDEX, so IDX went down a lot. So IDX is an early decentralized exchange that was initially built for end user, but not really with the DeFi philosophy in mind. You can't really, there is no composability on IDX, and I think that now they even have a KYC step. So I would say they're quite, they're not exactly in the same category as other decentralized exchange, and you can see that they are getting less and less popular. And Oasis, the exchange of MakerDAO, they went down a lot. So these are the key takeaways. And then we can see the trading volume by quarter here. So here we can see that Uniswap increased a lot. Same thing for Curve. Yeah, and Kyber, they increased but decreased after. Then the trader count keeps going up, so that's good. That means that DeFi is used more and more. And after we have the top trading pairs. So for the top trading pairs here, we can see that Wrapped Ether and DAI, so basically Ether DAI, is the most traded pair in DeFi. It's interesting to see that this is more traded. The DAI is more traded than Wrap Ether USDC, for example. And so that's a sign that people in DeFi really prefer to use decentralized stable coins. Then let's scroll down and we can see the most traded asset on different exchanges. So on Uniswap, that's Wrap Ether Hex, which is the Hex. This is the coin, the token of this guy, Richard Hart, this famous YouTuber. I think this is a quite controversial project. USDC, Wrap Ether USDC is also very traded, as well as Wrap Ether DAI. Then on Kyber, it's a little bit different. Wrap Ether DAI is the first one. Wrap Ether USDC is also very popular. And on IDX is completely different. But I think that IDX became less and less popular. So I don't think that what's happening in IDX is really important. And then we have the most traded pair on Curve, and unsurprisingly, this is the pair of stable coins, so Tether USDC. And yeah, that's pretty much it on this report. So I think that DappRadar does some really interesting report. They're doing a great job at refocusing on DeFi and finding some really interesting information. So that was it for the news about DeFi. Now I'm going to dive a little bit more in the news of blockchain developers. So Solidity, the programming language for smart contract, just turned 5 years old already. So this is a post on the blog of Solidity that explains a little bit the history of Solidity, how they designed language, how they made it evolve. So it's not very long and it's quite interesting. So yeah, just out of curiosity, if you want to know a little bit the context of Solidity, that's really interesting. And then after on Twitter, Chris, which is the creator of Solidity, I believe. So he mentioned Solidity 0.7, which is about to be released very soon. And one of the new features will be that we'll have unlimited stacks. So if you try to create smart contract with Solidity before, you probably noticed that Solidity is very limited, and if you have too many variables in a function, you can have an error that is called stack overflow. Is it stack overflow? I think so. Well, basically, you cannot have too many variables, but soon this limitation will be lifted, so that's super cool. Then on another news for developers, so that's for the wallet Taurus. So Taurus is a great wallet for decentralized application that's really a big improvement compared to MetaMask. The UX is really better, and now end user can create their wallet by using the Apple ID, GitHub, and other social media. So in terms of usability, that's really amazing. And you can also send token to Twitter and GitHub usernames. So I think that's way better because users always really struggle with Ethereum addresses. So that's really amazing. So if you want to have an awesome UI UX for your dApp, Taurus is a very solid option. Then there is a new tool for blockchain developer that I'm quite curious about. This is called Alchemy Build. So it overlaps a little bit with some of the tools of Truffle. So we have a block explorer that I think you can connect it to your Ganache CLI instance, and you can inspect the blockchain. Then mempool visualizers. So that's probably very interesting. If you connect to an Ethereum node connected to a mainnet, so you can inspect what's in the mempool. The mempool is basically a buffer where you have a list of all the pending transactions. And then you have all the other visual tool that allow you to develop your smart contract more easily. The UI look really excellent, and the team seems to be really good. So yeah, I'm super excited to check it out. And then, so the graph, which is this API for Ethereum, so this API, this GraphQL API that allow you to very easily read the data of a smart contract or create an API for your smart contract in just a couple of lines of code. They hit 1 billion monthly queries, so it's really good. It means that their service is very useful. And in the live last week, I mentioned that they recently received an investment of 5 million from a couple of investment funds. So yeah, the graph currently is really growing at a fast pace. So I think I'm going to do a tutorial about them because that's probably something that you will need in your toolkit as a blockchain developer. And that was also this tutorial I wanted to show you. So tutorial by hosting Thomas Griffiths. So you guys probably know him. He works at the Ethereum Foundation and he does a lot of things for Ethereum developer. Really cool guy to follow. And so he has done this tutorial to do a dApp built on Ethereum and IPFS. So the problem we're trying to solve here is storage on Ethereum. Storage on Ethereum is very expensive. You'll need to pay a lot of gas if you want to store, for example, some images. So what you can do is you can store your data on IPFS, which is a decentralized network for storing anything you want. This is not a blockchain. This is different. This is really, I think the definition is just decentralized network. And so you store your data on IPFS, then you get a hash that identifies this data. And after you put this hash in a smart contract on Ethereum, and so this way you can, by querying a smart contract on Ethereum, you obtain the signature of this data, and you can get the actual data with IPFS. But it's not always easy to see how you can combine these two different technologies. So I think he did a great job at building this tutorial to show you how you can do it quickly. And he uses a tool that is called Create ETH App. So that's a CLI tool to very easily bootstrap some Ethereum project. Also, he uses Builder. Yeah, so that's an alternative tool for building dApp based on the command line. I wanted to show you this last week, but there was a mistake on my computer, so I had to cancel. But yeah, like more and more people are talking about this Builder thing, so I probably should do a tutorial on that. Yeah, so if you guys want to do a tutorial, like that's a really good stuff. So now I'm going to answer the question on the chat. So let me see, who do we have here? So Josh was asking, any chance I can get a position just doing Solidity? I hate JavaScript. Yeah, Josh, you can be just a smart contract developer. So if you want to be a smart contract developer, you will need to be really good at security. You will need to know the Ethereum virtual machine really well. And what else? Yeah, you will need to know how to use security tools like Mithril. Yeah, so it's totally possible. But even if you just do smart contract development, you still need to have some basic skills in JavaScript. At least because when we use development tools on the back end, we need to use Node.js and NPM. So there is no way you can totally avoid JavaScript. You can reduce your exposure to JavaScript, but you can't eliminate it 100%. Did someone say, hey, if after 6 months I started 2 courses, then do you think it will be too late to get a remote job with a good offer? No, but it takes time to go through. I think you're talking of one of my course. Well, if you're talking of one of my course, this course take time. So the earlier you start, the better. That's for sure. Yeah, but it will never be too late. But it's in general, yeah, I recommend to start as soon as you can. And Josh saying I'm proficient in Python. Yeah, so if you're proficient in Python, that's great. It's always better than to be a total beginner. You can check out Viper, which is an alternative smart contract language. This is very close to Python, but you have to know that the industry is really based on Solidity. So you have to be super good at Solidity no matter what. Isn't it possible to use, for example, Python instead of JavaScript, Node.js? You can use Python on the backend. So in your decentralized application, you'll have a backend, a front end, and the front end will connect to the blockchain. But usually in the backend, we don't have much. So for most application, most of the code will be JavaScript code in the front end. But there are also some dApps where you have an interaction between the backend and the blockchain. So in this case, you can use Python for your dApp. Yes, take a look at Brownie. It's truffle, but in Python. Yes, talking about this, I had a really bad experience with Brownie. Maybe it's my fault, I don't know. So I try to use it, and they ask to install this tool in Python that's basically the equivalent of npx, but for Python. I think this is called pipx. And I tried to install it, and it basically broke my Python installation. And now when I try to run Python script on my computer, it just doesn't work. I just have access to Python 2 instead of Python 3. So I use Homebrew to manage Python, and I try to uninstall Python 3, reinstall it, and yeah, it didn't work. So careful with this thing like pipx. Like I really have hate for this thing. I don't know what it did to my computer, but that really sucks. But that's a shame because yeah, Python, I think this Python is a much more pleasurable language to work with than JavaScript. That's for sure. It's just much more beautiful. It just makes much more sense. Yeah, no doubt about this. All right. What else, guy? Well, I think we pretty much covered everything. So yes, thanks for coming, and I'll see you next week for another newsletter on the latest news for Ethereum and DeFi. I'll talk to you soon, guys. Bye.